So much for giving me an opportunity to share my views on this forum. And I would like to appreciate the contribution, despite challenges that this forum is making in highlighting the Kashmir issue, both internationally, regionally, and nationally. And I think previous speaker, Sheikh Waleed Rasool Saab, has extensively and comprehensively encompassed various dimensions of the Kashmir issue. And actually, he has made my task very easy for two reasons. Because one, that he gave a very comprehensive academic perspective, and secondly, he referred to international relations and peace and conflict studies. So what I'll do is try to build further and expand beyond what he has already said. So my central argument in the next 15 minutes would be that Kashmir issue should be seen not in isolation from global politics, from world order, and the transforming role of international institutions and increasing role of lawfare in modern and contemporary statecraft. So if you look at Kashmir, we have been talking about Kashmir from as a humanitarian issue, as a regional security issue. But I think this approach has been useful in terms of highlighting the humanitarian concern of the Kashmiris, and also raising concern in terms of its implications for peace and security in South Asia. But what we should consider is to go beyond these two paradigms and try to see Kashmir issue in terms of world order, number one, which is transforming. Number two, in terms of the increasing role of lawfare in modern and contemporary statecraft. Why I'm saying that is because of two reasons. First, because most of the time the discussion on Kashmir has been focused either in terms of the humanitarian tragedy unfolding in Kashmir for almost 73 years, or the kinetic or hard power based options or expectations that most Kashmiris expect or harbor from the state of Pakistan. So what can we do beyond these two things is what I'm going to talk about in the next few minutes. And before that, I'll explain why I am proposing a new or a more comprehensive strategy for winning the freedom for the Kashmiris. Because the contemporary paradigm that international relations and also security studies consider, which comprehensively not just identifies and exhibits the Indian behavior, but also provides Kashmiris and Pakistanis who are resident in this region and also around the world several new options to advance their case, to build their case, and to promote this issue globally. And that paradigm is called hybrid warfare. So when we talk about hybrid warfare, what do I mean by hybrid warfare? I think Waleed Rasool Saab comprehensively gave few examples how both Kashmiris and Pakistanis have been a victim of Indian hybrid warfare in several domains. So we should not see Kashmir in isolation of that. Why? Because what does India want? India just does not want merely to occupy Kashmir and change its demography. That is a very critical objective that India is pursuing. But that is not the only objective. You should see things in a global and regional perspective. Basically, India, under the current BJP-led government, aspires to be eventually a Hindu superpower. And in this context, regional hegemony and dominance and changing of demography in IIOJK and dominating Pakistan, isolating Pakistan, coercing Pakistan is an interim measure to build its international status, that not only it has marginalized the Muslims, the Kashmiris, but it has hegemonized the region, it is dominating the region, and now it deserves to be respected and recognized as a world power, which wants to promote and protect its own value system, irrespective of the fact that how extremist, destabilizing, and dangerous it would be for the international world order. And that narrative is very important because the contemporary world order, which is gradually transforming, was built and shaped after the Second World War by the victors of the Second World War. And they built not just international institutions like United Nations and its subsidiary bodies like IMF, World Bank, UN Human Rights Council, Conference on Disarmament, IMF, World Bank, and several others, and developed different laws and regimes which allowed them to establish an international world order. So what we need to do is to shape a global narrative, not just based on the grievance of Kashmiris, but of warning the status quo world powers like the US, that the emergence of India, led by extremist Hindutva ideology, is a threat to global peace and security. And what the brave Kashmiris are doing in the streets and villages of illegally occupied Indian Jammu and Kashmir, it is the first frontier on behalf of the civilized world, and it is the first battleground where this battle is being waged on behalf of the civilized world against the rising global threat of Hindutva, against the rising global threat of Hindu extremism, which does not tolerate diversity and respect for other value system and faith and way of life inside its own territory or the territory that it occupies. Then how can you expect them to promote peace and security and stability at the global level while they want to be a member of the UN Security Council? So that is the meta narrative that you should consider shaping, because this issue, this narrative based on grievance and weakness and the humanitarian tragedy is true, unfortunately, but not very effective. You must consider shaping a narrative which is globally interesting and useful and goes beyond seeking mercy and humanitarian relief, and show and warn the world powers that this rise of a Hindu extremist ideology is a threat for the global peace and security. And investing in this society or to provide arms, ammunition, and latest technology to this Hindutva-led ideology, or to arm it, or to support it in the membership of nuclear suppliers group, and to neglect its rising nuclear program is a grave neglect by the international community in general and the major five powers which are the permanent members of Security Council, because this is a global threat to the world peace and security, but also to the individual interests of these countries. And we should not be pessimistic and take it as a foregone conclusion that the Indians and the Americans have become strategic partners. There are wise American strategic experts. I teach at international forums like NDU Washington. I have published at Brookings. I have lectured at Harvard. And I'm telling you, some of the leading strategic thinkers are not ideological, and they are also not emotional. They do not expect India to offer the security commitment against China that some Indians are trying to promote as a false narrative, because India does not have the strategic character. It does not have the strategic culture. Its ideology is anti-Muslim. Its threat perception and its fear is from the Muslim civilization. Its ideology, its strategic culture, its political history, its defense posture, all these things are Pakistan-centric and based on the hatred against the Muslims, which are living either in Kashmir or Pakistan. So those thinkers in America are aware of the true strategic character of India, that it is based on the exploitation and marginalization of Muslims living inside India, or the subjugation and oppression of Muslims living in Indian occupied Kashmir, and the dominance, coercion, and isolation of the Muslims living in Pakistan, so that they present Muslims as a threat to international peace and security. And that is what we must warn the international community. But I think there are opportunities and there are rays of hope which must be effectively utilized and timely and effectively tapped. And here are a few suggestions that I'd like to share with you. First of all, let me appreciate and laud the consistent, patient, and resolute determination of the Kashmiris who are fighting the oppression of Indians despite all sorts of challenges that are unprecedented on this planet. I really appreciate. The most important weapon, the most important thing is their determination and confidence and hope. The world does not remain the same all the time. The circumstances change. 73 years is a long time. But when you look at, for example, the UN Charter, since 1945, 35 states became independent under the principle of under the principle of the right of self-determination by 1946. By 1970, 127 states had become independent. And while we need to expose the true Indian character and behavior before the world, the role of our international diaspora, be it Kashmiri, be it Pakistani, is critical. Because what Sheikh Waleed Saab is saying here, what I am saying here, what Nasir Qadri is doing here is very important. But what will matter more is those Pakistanis and Kashmiris who are living and resident in the 5 most important capitals of the world. Can they influence the politics and policies of major powers from within their system? Those Kashmiris and Pakistanis it is very important that with the passage of time, it is great, I think, achievement that our friends who are members of um, the British Parliament, and there are few Muslims who are now, becoming members of the US Congress. And in future, that is very important, that the role of the Muslim diaspora, the Kashmiri diaspora, that when you raise uh, your voices and concerns and influence the policy debates and the policy direction from the legislatures of the major five powers, that matters far more than whatever condemnation or concern we show at other forums, including from the state of Pakistan. And it is not one or the other, we need to reinforce it. The third thing is, and I think Qadri Saab himself is an expert on that, I think we have talked much about it, but we have not effectively developed a comprehensive plan or a strategy that how can at international forums we can use lawfare as a strategy, not just to expose India, but also to raise the political and diplomatic cost of its irresponsible behavior towards the Kashmiris in particular and Pakistan and the region in general. I think what the Indian External Affairs Minister has said yesterday, that it was the Indian influence in terms of FATF that ensured that Pakistan remained in the grey list, is legal, is legally useful. I think I look forward to listening from Qadri Saab, who's a legal expert, that it is formal recognition and admission that India is using law, international law and international forums for its political purposes based on malified intentions to harm the interests of Kashmiris and Pakistan. We must consider and reflect how such behavior and actions and admissions tantamount to admission of politicizing international institutions, and how these incidents can be recorded, how they can be consolidated, how they can be reported, and a case can be built against India in international forums where its behavior towards the Kashmiris, towards Pakistan can be exposed, but also all those, Mr. Qadri has a complete record of how many FIRs have been registered against the law enforcement agencies of India against the Kashmiris. These documents are very useful, and how they can be, this can help us build a case in international forums that this many violations have been made, and how can in International Court of Justice the Kashmiri and Pakistani diaspora can use all these legal documents to ensure that the Indian behavior is exposed and also a political cost is imposed on them. The third thing is the diplomatic aspect. I think the Kashmiri diaspora, and I think even AJK government has been trying very hard, including the president, Mr. Masood Khan, to basically promote international diplomacy. But it is also very important that Kashmiri, the think tanks of Kashmiris should reinforce these formal state-led efforts through track 1.5 and track 2 diplomacy with the international powers, with the international institutions, with international think tanks, with and there should be engagements with China, with France, with Britain, with Russia, and with the US. And it is not just that we should go to UN and Washington only. The transforming world order offers opportunities, and we must not neglect it. And I think Sheikh Waleed gave a very good example that we should learn from Afghan Taliban. they are considered a non-state actor, but they have been de facto recognized by the sole superpower in a unipolar environment by allowing them to open an office in Doha, where they have been dealing with the sole superpower for so many years. And the sole superpower also signed an agreement with them, which is called Doha Accord, in which the state of Afghanistan was not even a party. So I completely endorse Sheikh Walid Rasul's point of view that when you have a leverage and influence over major powers, the legal recognition or the legal document in the form of an agreement is a consequence of your strategic and political leverage. It's not the other way around that you beg for mercy and you seek a humanitarian agreement, which is never going to come in real polity from a realist paradigm. And then you pursue your case based on that argument. It is the other way around. If the Afghan Taliban can force the US to allow them to open a formal office in Doha, sign a bilateral agreement with the US, and still continue to negotiate because their leverage based on the influence that they enjoy on the streets and villages of Afghanistan actually is the real leverage they have over all the others, which is respected by everybody. They are engaged with China. They are engaged with Pakistan. They are engaged with Russia. They are engaged with Iran. They are engaged with USA. They are engaged with all the Central Asian countries. And they are just a small non-state actor. I think the numbers of Kashmiris, the number of Kashmiri diaspora around the world is much more. You are much more educated. You are much more influential around the world. You have more money, you have more recognition, you have more knowledge, you have more education, you have more influence. What do you need to do with in collaboration with Pakistanis? You need to translate this knowledge, this wealth, this diaspora into influencing the world powers around the world, and not just focus only on the US. You should, and you are doing great in UK, but also focus on France, China, Britain, Russia, and other countries, so that the international environment has to be shaped in a manner in which India is seen as a threat to international peace and security. And its behavior, its military cooperation, its diplomatic recognition, its political support is reduced and reviewed. And once you shape that environment, only then the cause of the Kashmiris will receive due attention and support. My last words are that merely highlighting it as a humanitarian cause is useful in terms of emphasizing the grave tragedy that is going on in Kashmir, in Indian occupied Kashmir. But that is not sufficient. You must reinforce it with a stronger, powerful global narrative that India is a threat to international peace and security based on all these facts and figures which your think tank is compiling and comprehensively analyzing and reinforcing it with diaspora and lawfare and with the help of think tanks and international media. Thank you so much.